Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy, and the subjects can get saucy. So, if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted chats with some of the most interesting culinary voices in the American South. This region is one of the country's vacation and retirement playgrounds. But beyond the warm weather and beautiful scenery, there's a rich culture steeped in community and often dark and complicated history, and plenty of innovation among the tradition. I'm Stephanie Burt, and I've spent a career covering this region for magazines, newspapers, and websites. And to me, the best introduction to the American South is through its food culture and the growers and makers who make it delicious. I invite you to come on the road with me from the Appalachian Mountains to the clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico and everywhere in between. I'm always hungry for that next bite, thirsty for the next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is supported today by Big Spoon Roasters. I've been a fan of these small batch nut butters for years before I interviewed co-founder Mark Overbay in 2022. And that's because they're not even in the same category of your average peanut butter. Produced in Hillsborough, North Carolina, these specialty spreads use the most sustainably sourced products available in recipes ranging from Fiji ginger almond butter that includes mission almonds, crystallized ginger, and sea salt, to a lemon cookie, cashew, and coconut butter. They make nut butters for you chocolate fans too, and limited seasonal recipes that pop up on the scene sometimes as well. Over the years, I've received jars from them a few times to play with and potentially use in recipes, but that's been an utter fail. I've just ended up eating them straight from the jar with a spoon every time. Visit bigspoonroasters.com to check out all the nut butters, energy bars, and even peanut butters for dogs, and order online or look for them at Whole Foods and other specialty grocery retailers. Big Spoon Roasters believes our food choices matter, and choosing Big Spoon is a delicious decision. Passion for your work can give you energy to do more than you ever dreamed you'd have time for. That's the case for William Dissen, chef of the Marketplace in Asheville, North Carolina, which this year, its 45th in operation, was named a semifinalist for Outstanding Restaurant by the James Beard Foundation. William began honing his skills through study at the Culinary Institute of America and in various kitchens, including the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia and the beloved but now closed Cypress in Charleston, South Carolina. In addition to another restaurant venture, Billy D's Fried Chicken, he has a big life outside the kitchen as well. He's a member of the U.S. State Department's American Chef Corps, a seafood watch ambassador for the Monterey Bay Aquarium, on the board of the University of South Carolina School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, and now a cookbook author with thoughtful cooking, recipes rooted in the New South. Granted, it's an unusual title for a man who always seems on the go. But because of his style of cooking, he's always looking to nature and the seasons, which tell him to slow down and notice. It's a practice he actively cultivates. Take one bite of his food, and that's evident. There's a grounded ethos behind every dish. Welcome to the Southern Fork, William.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited. We had such a good time last night.
It was fun.
I did. I was, handed champagne and food all evening. It was wonderful.
Well, it was fun to cook for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love eating. It doesn't get old for me. And so I'm also a cook, and I enjoy cooking for people who like eating. So I appreciate it. I was trying to think what the standout dish was. And I think for me, it's got to be the spoon bread.
Spoon bread is fun, isn't it?
It was really fun. So, Southern Fork listeners, it was a carrot spoon bread. It is time for a little bit of the Southern Fork confessional right now. I get a weekly allotment of vegetables at my house. They're lovely from all lovely farmers, and had to put the carrots directly into the compost recently. And I run a no-waste kitchen, so it's not cool. But I just was like, I just can't with the carrots this week. I don't know. I just kept looking at them and then they went. So carrots aren't up there for me. But I mean, you don't see spoon bread, and I'd never even considered a carrot spoon bread. And I think it's a great way to kind of get into your idea of cooking. Because talk to us about spoon bread as a dish.
Sure. For me, spoon bread it's kind of like two iterations, in my opinion. It's kind of either like a souffle, similar to the carrot spoon bread you had last night, or it's like a savory bread pudding. And for me, getting into carrots, I love all vegetables, right? Owning a farm to table restaurant, that's our whole mantra, right? We're not a vegetarian restaurant, but vegetables reign supreme.
We call it veggie forward in the biz.
Yeah, veggie forward. Yeah, still love my meat. Don't get me wrong, but vegetables are great. And trying to take a pedestrian carrot and turn it into something more elevated is something we try to do in our kitchen here. Right? We want to showcase the season. We want to showcase really just the beauty of the vegetables, and something as simple as a carrot, turn that into a spoon bread, serve that with the taleggio espuma.
Let's talk about that, because I could have had a whole coffee cup full of that.
That's good stuff.
I'm sure that wouldn't be really approved as far as a balanced diet, but
taleggio, if you know, and for the listeners, taleggio brings the funk. It's like James Brown, the kitchen, right? It's like smelly, stinky. We don't do a lot of necessarily modernist cooking, but I felt like this iteration, it needed this foam, this espuma. And, years ago I had made, you'll laugh about this, but made a nacho cheese espuma.
Oh.
Right? Like cheese dip,
yes.
right? Think like Mexican American restaurant.
You're invited to the potluck, William.
Right?
I want that.
People always say like, hey, we should meet for coffee. Why don't they say, why can't we meet for queso?
Yes. Yes. And let's meet for queso. But I loved it. There was it was more than just a drizzle. It was like a good portion of that too. And it really made the dish richer. But spoon bread really is kind of an old school Appalachian kind of bread pudding dish.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of times it's taking leftovers, right? And then turning it into something more. And really that's, as you mentioned, your own kitchen, being a no waste kitchen, sustainability, zero waste is something we focus on as well. It's something I not to get off tangent, but that I don't talk about a lot, but the marketplace is probably one of the greenest restaurants in the country. We're solar powered. The table we're sitting here at, this is salvaged hardwood from old tobacco barn in Haywood County. The metal in the restaurant, it's all recycled. It's trying to do things that are take care of the world around you, but also to honor it.
What I love, it's not just my job, but it is really my passion, is food and context. So what you're really talking about is living in context and working in that context. And this book, Thoughtful Cooking, it had me at hello with the title, because I'm all about the deep thoughts with Jack Handy. That's me all the time.
We'll get into that in a minute.
However, I think this kind of idea of running no waste, being sustainable, it's inconvenient. We have this dichotomy right now of inconvenient is hard and convenient is easy. That, I think, is a false narrative, because convenience is often not satisfying. So you have to do more of it, right? Like if you go get the 99-cent Taco Bell, it's convenient, it's great, but like in an hour, you're going to need another 99-cent Taco Bell, especially if you're me, because I can eat 7 courses.
Right. We want our quick fix.
Right.
I know you can eat 7 courses because I think you did last night.
You're like, oh, okay.
Touche. But I agree with you. Convenience, we live in a world of convenience, right? We are all constantly in this mode of doom scroll on our phones, and guilty as charged, right? Like, I have children, I run businesses, I'm all over the place. And it's very easy to just say, hey, I'm going to take the easy route. But I feel like as a culture, and also generationally, we have kind of gotten lost in the sauce, right? If you go back 2 generations and before then, I guarantee if I asked you, hey, was anybody in your family a gardener or a farmer? And you would say, well, my grandma, my grandfather, my great grandfather, right? You look back historically, the world industrialized, right? And things got more convenient.
But when it's convenient, you always have to spend money.
There is truth with that. And I think that's where you look back to them, and back through the Great Depression, and they used everything, right? They were zero waste. They raised everything. They ate seasonally. They canned, pickled, preserved, dehydrated, fermented. They did all these Brooklyn hipster DIY things, not because they were trying to be the cool cats, because they were poor and they didn't want to throw anything away because that's money you're throwing in the trash.
And I mean, I come at it from a place of thrift. And I also come at it from a place of knowing being at the farm, so using that carrot top and making carrot top pesto and roasting those carrots and then drizzling that. And by the way, it's so good. So can you talk to me about the joy of inconvenience? Because as a fine dining chef, as a farm to table chef, as a chef that sources locally, all of those things are inconvenient and they can be a drag, but you seem to have a lot of joy in those. So that,
I don't want to throw anything away. There's flavor in everything. And again, that inconvenience of saying, well, what am I going to do with these carrot tops? I don't have anything to do with them. Just compost them or throw them in the trash. They have flavor, right? And I think that's where people were used to the convenience of, oh, the carrots have tops. They're trash, right? But take a second, clean them, right? Get the dirt and muck out of them, taste them, see what they taste like. You taste a carrot top in the spring, it tastes bright and fresh. You taste one towards the summer, it starts to get a little earthier. You taste carrots again in the fall after the first freeze, the carrots get sweeter, the carrot tops start to sweeten, right? And there's these flavors that you get only when you connect yourself to the world around you through inconvenience. And I think that's a special thing, right? People aren't connected anymore. They aren't connected to each other. We hide behind our phones and our screens. We don't talk to each other the way we used to, and we don't take the time to go through the processes of life, right? We want it quicker, faster, bigger, badder, bolder.
And there's somewhere in between that, right?
There is, but I think there, sometimes it's good to sit down, slow down, right? Take a deep breath, like watch the grass grow, as good Southerners do, sit in a spell on the front porch.
Hey, Jennifer Cole had those front porch sessions for a reason, right?
Right.
And these are mine. 30 minutes.
Where's our rocking chairs?
Oh man, you wouldn't get me to go out if I got a rocking chair. I'm there all day. I'd be like, more wine, please. Yeah. How do you carve into your life? Because you're a great example. You're running a high pressure kitchen when this place is full, or you're plating 500 things at a food festival, or just like when you were on Chicago, cooking on screen. You can see the monitor and you can see you've got 20 seconds. How do you carve those spaces for a deeper spot? Because your food, your writing has that depth to it.
I think it's part of my upbringing. My parents, I think, did a great job. I was very fortunate to have grandparents that had a farm, very rural West Virginia. There were days I hated going to the farm, like, as we say, up in the holler, back in the holler. And it was a country, and I said, I don't want to be there. I want to be with my friends. I don't want to be doing these things. But I think some of the lifestyle they imprinted upon me helped me to be a little more connected and thoughtful about how I run my life. I like to be full steam ahead, right? I think that's, probably ADD and undiagnosed.
I think we've all diagnosed ourselves at this point, don't you think?
I think so. But, I think the thing is, though, like, when you're going fast, you have to take time to stop or you're going to burn out. And I've hit burnout before. I've hit overload. And as I've gotten older, I think that's one of the things that I really focus on. I have notes in my calendar and I carve out time just for myself, even if it's 30 minutes, to say, like, turn your device off, go for a walk around the block. My days off, again, fortunate to live here in Asheville, but I go for a hike, even if it's for a mile, 2 miles, right? If I'm lucky to get out and do an 8 or 10 mile hike, amazing, right? Go camping. But when you get that opportunity, you live in a place like this and you can get out and there's no one around, and the silence is deafening, all of a sudden you hit Control-Alt-Delete, you hit a hard reset.
For ADD people like us, cooking can really give you that focus too. There is this feeling of flow. Do you cook with your children?
I try to. We're getting there.
They're 8 and 9, right?
They like to eat, which is good. And they're good eaters. They're not too picky, which is nice. I am trying to get them in the kitchen a little bit more.
Because it's hard to get into the personal flow when you're trying to cook with kids.
True. It is true.
You're like, don't cut your finger off.
Right. Well, there's that, but I think that's, that's something that my parents, got me to help with. Even things as little as, hey, you're setting the table. And guilty too, right, of, eating dinner standing up some days. Right. While I'm feeding my children. But trying to take the time where we all sit down and we do share a table together and share a meal. I think that's another thing too about thoughtful cooking, right? About the people you're eating with and people you're cooking for. Cooking can be just an act. Like we talk a lot about this in our restaurant. Like what's the difference between service and hospitality? Service is an act, right? Like, what can I get you? Here's your food, right? But hospitality is a feeling. It's this like warm, gracious feeling, like welcome to my home. Let me hold the door for you. Put a drink in your hand. Let me turn the music up a little bit for you. What's your favorite music? What's your favorite station?
We had the 90s rolling in here. No, not the 90s. Wasn't the 90s? No, it was early 2000s in here.
We did last night.
We had some Jewel. We had some Alanis Morissette.
That was not my playlist, by the way.
It was a flashback moment. I finally just said, look, this is getting too real. I need another move. I do think that there's something to this idea of service versus hospitality, and it kind of loops back into that idea of connection with food. You're an intelligent guy. What's your graduate degree in?
International Hospitality and Tourism Management.
Well, there you go. From the University of South Carolina. Yep. It's a great program.
It's a great program. I'm on the board of directors.
But not until you graduated.
That's right.
But cooking grabbed you early. Was it that connection? What was the first thing that you loved about cooking in the kitchen?
Again, back to my grandmother, I grew up as a Billy, and I remember in the middle of summer, it's August, up in the holler, it's sticky and sweaty.
And we're talking West Virginia holler.
Virginia holler.
We are hollers. I had lived not too far here for a few years, and not a few years, a few months, because I didn't realize I was moving to a rainforest, and it doesn't really work well with my psyche. But I lived in Possum Holler in Sapphire Valley.
Nice, beautiful place.
Yeah. So I get you. Yeah.
But I remember a very vivid memory. I was probably about my son's age, maybe 8 years old. And my grandmother, my mama, as I called her, she said, all right, Billy, go get some corn. Started a pot of boiling salt water on the stove. I ran out to the field and grabbed as many ears of corn as I could fit in my two arms and waddled back to the front porch. We sat in the front porch in the middle of summer, sticky, hot, sweaty, shucked corn, went inside, boiled the corn in the pot, slathered some softened butter on it, a little salt. And I remember my head exploding off my shoulders going, like, I've never eaten food before.
Right.
And the connection didn't happen until later in life, but that was the moment for me I look back at to regress back and to remember, like, that's when I started to get connected to food.
And then the first time you made a dish yourself instead of eating someone else's, right? And your head kind of flew off. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm cooking alone in the kitchen, sometimes I'm like, that is so good.
Right.
And I'm just like, y'all, and there's no one there. And I'm like, it's so good, especially when I follow the recipe instead of amending it 14 times like I want to do, I'm like, wow, this is really good. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember what dish it was when you're all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I did that?
I had a moment when I was in college. I haven't told many people this, so I guess it's out there now.
It's going to be out there.
When I was in college for my undergrad at West Virginia University, I worked at kind of brother-sister restaurants. One of them was a lakefront seafood restaurant, casual restaurant, and the other was a full-on biker bar. And
sweet.
Yep. Yeah, I cooked and bounced.
It's also bouncer. Interesting.
So I remember one day we had a Cobb salad, there were wings and things like that in the menu. And
I would never eat a Cobb salad at a biker bar.
No, probably not. The food was good there. I will give you that.
All right.
But I remember I made a Cobb salad and I plated it, in the basket, with a tray liner in it. And the kitchen manager, chef, or whatever you want to call it, looked at me and he was like, damn, that looks good, man. And I plated it really pretty and sauced everything. And he looked at me and he was like, man, maybe you should think about cooking.
You're like, it was the tray liner that did it, right?
So it was this moment of especially when you're that age, right? 20 to 22, everyone's saying, what are you going to do with your life?
Always.
What are you going to do?
People still ask me that.
Yeah, same.
When are you going to get a real job?
Yeah, why you want to cook? That was the moment for me. I started thinking the synapses fired, and I said, maybe this is what I want to do. And that was the point. After that, I had actually applied to culinary school in Lyon, France. I have undergrad in English and French, and I thought, I'll go to school in France. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I applied to Paul Bocuse's school, L'École Culinaire de Lyon in Lyon, France, and I got accepted. And they said, we don't take Americans. And this was a while back, and I went to the bank and I said, hey, I got accepted to culinary school in France. I need a loan. And they were like, in France? Son, you need to go to law school.
That's what they said? That's great.
So I ended up going to culinary school at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And when I got there, I realized, like, okay, like, this is my life's calling.
Yeah. It's a nice moment when that puzzle piece locks.
For years, people said, why do you want to be a cook? Why do you want to be a chef? Why would you go to culinary school? You're messing your life up. They'd all read Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, and they said, look what you're going to turn into. And I said, I know, it's amazing, right?
Right? I'm getting a dangly earring. Yeah. I can't wait.
But it's funny, actually, during the pandemic, December 26th of 2020, a box showed up on my front porch. And I thought, Christmas is over, kids. Like, there ain't no more gifts. We're done. And the box was addressed to me, and I opened it, and there was a card inside, and it was from my dad's first cousin, Jeannie. And there was an old, like a 100-year-plus old beer stein, German beer stein inside. And there was this card, and it said, this has been sitting on my mantle my entire life. My husband has passed away. We're downsizing. And I know you're a chef, and I thought this would mean something to you. This was your great-grandfather's, who was an immigrant from Germany. He was a chef in the hotel, in the Monongah House Hotel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it was considered one of the greatest restaurants and hotels in the country at the time. And he cooked for presidents and all these things.
And you never knew that?
I had no idea.
That is so cool.
And then she went on to say that the family immigrated over from the town of Dissen in Germany, this tiny little village that apparently was, like a tourist weekend destination. And my family had been in the hospitality industry there for like 6 generations. So you got it in your DNA. And my whole life, I thought, am I doing the right thing? And that was the moment where I said, you know what?
It only took till 2020 for you to know. I have to ask you, do you have a favorite season or vegetable category, since you really have cooked seasonally for so many years, and especially even writing this book?
I think every time the seasons change, I say, oh man, I love this ingredient. It's my favorite, right? I'm a little biased, but I do think I love spring the most. Especially being in Appalachia, right? Like winters can be kind of gray and brown and, and bleak. Springs can be gray and brown and bleak too. They can. To a certain point. But when, when you start to get reconnected to the world around you and you're outside and you're on that hike and you start seeing the world get green around you and come back to life, and tasting the things that are coming out of the ground, it's a special time. Appalachian spring is a very beautiful thing. But I certainly love, I love springtime. I love ramps. I love asparagus and strawberries and, all the greens that come out of the ground. Like, I feel like that's the fun thing about seasonal eating, is that as the world is changing, the ingredients change. And if you connect yourself to it, things are growing that your body needs. And if you can take the time to listen, right? Like you're nourishing yourself, in tune with the planet. I agree with that. Once you start eating that way, I'm not needing strawberries in July because I've gorged myself the last month on strawberries. I've had them in my smoothies every day and salads and all that. So I'm satiated, is that the word? And I'm ready to move on to blueberries now. Exactly. Foraging is such a big thing up here. Do you work with foragers, or are you a forager? Both, yeah. So again, back to West Virginia, you kind of got to be, right? I mean, it's in our roots, right? Yeah. I remember growing up, my grandfather would take me out in the woods to forage for ramps or ginseng or mushrooms. They call it sang, right? Sang, yeah, right? Some sang. And I just thought he was a little out there. Fast forward, on the marketplace for a while, and we buy probably over 3,000 pounds of wild mushrooms a year. Wow. Not including cultivated. And that's because it's all around us. Western North Carolina is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. The flora, fauna, the mushrooms that grow here, it's unlike any other place, right? And so the amount of wild mushrooms we can get here is pretty amazing. And that's, there's so many other ingredients. There's There's wild nettles. There's
Yeah, we had a wild nettle pasta last night.
the spring green pasta.
Yes, and I know what, it was delicious, but I'm a little afraid of wild nettles because of the stinging nettles.
Once you process
thing.
them, it loses the sting.
Okay, good.
They're
My pasta did not sting.
They're actually one of the healthiest things you can eat. You are glowing today, so.
Excellent. I think about that biodiversity and that you actually get to interact with that in a very visceral way on a daily basis. And you see that calendar turn slowly here, working daily and seeing that product come in. That does give you an anchor for a more grounded experience, I would imagine.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with that. I mean, I think in Appalachia in particular, we get 4 very distinct seasons, right? Compared to, I lived in Santa Barbara, California for a while. I remember the house I lived in had this skylight and there was a palm tree that arched over it. Every day I'd wake up and look up the skylight and be like, thunderstorm. And there was that palm tree in the blue sky just kind of swaying in the breeze, right?
Yeah.
And it's always, it's Groundhog Day. It's always beautiful.
Right.
And here I like the seasonality. I like the thunderstorms. It's nice. I love sunshine, but it's nice to have that, that kind of dichotomy between things.
Yeah, the shift.
Yeah.
So this is 15 years. So now you're 15 years in this restaurant. Book, James Beard nomination, and this restaurant is celebrating 45 years, correct?
45 years in 2024. Pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing, because y'all, restaurants don't last usually. So 45 years is a long time for this restaurant to be here and still be relevant. What now? I mean, you just put this book out. What is making you hungry? You seem to be busy all the time. You have Billy D's fried chicken in Asheville at the zoo. So what's happening? What's next on the agenda?
I think we were chatting a little bit last night. I've got some other thoughts for maybe other cookbooks in the future.
You enjoyed the process.
Yeah, I wouldn't say enjoyed writing a cookbook. I mean,
you are a writer then, because then you can't say you enjoy it, but you can't stop.
Writing a book was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Super difficult. The photography, getting everything lined up, making it succinct, making it sound nice. Right? It's not an easy thing to do. Like, kudos to you and other colleagues who are journalists. Right? It's not easy, but it's gratifying.
But we always have help. It is a collaboration with editors as well.
But I think there's a lot of overlap with journalists, with chefs, with musicians, with artists, right? Like we're all storytellers. And again, back to my Appalachian roots, right? Someone asked me, they said, how do you see yourself when you're old? And I said, I know exactly. I'll be sitting on my front porch in the rocking chair, telling bullshit stories to my grandkids and just going on. And I think that's what we do through food, right? Is we tell stories. And I think I finally got to a point in my career where I had confidence in the way I cooked, confidence in the stories I was telling on the plate within the 4 walls of my restaurants, that it was time to put those thoughts on paper.
Mm-hmm. What is one aspect of this job that really meshes with the natural, innate part of Billy's personality?
Just being busy, being on the run, but also interacting with people, interacting with guests, with our staff, our team here. They're spectacular, right? They're kind-hearted, they're outgoing, they're hardworking. And I think those are all characteristic traits I try to have for myself, and to be surrounded by others that have that same characteristic trait, and they believe in process, they believe in the product, they believe in making people happy through food. Like that's a wonderful place to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's regenerative.
It is.
To work with people like that, right?
It is.
You're having a bad day and they're not trying to fix everything for you, but it kind of just helps ease it.
I mean, we're in the energy vortex here in Asheville, right? It's all about good vibes.
That whole alleyway out there is a patchouli scented walk from my hotel. I just was enveloped in patchouli the entire way. It's the only place outside of Northern California you can really get that. What is something keeping you up at night? We did also speak off mic about lack of sleep.
Sleep when you die, right?
My brain never stops. That's a problem.
Yeah. I'm always on the go. What keeps me up at night? I keep a journal of dreams and schemes beside my bed. So when I wake up like that in the middle of the night, I can jot it down so I don't forget it. I think that's what keeps me up, is that there's always some new dream and there's some new scheme and there's some idea I have that, it could just be, a way to get the creative juices out. But also, it could be something I'm onto, the next restaurant or the next book or the next event or something that I really want to do. And I think a lot of chefs in particular, right? Good is not good enough. We want it to be great.
Yes.
And in order to make it great, 6 P's, right? You got to plan. You got to get it all together, mise en place, and you can't do that sitting on your hands.
That's true. I knew you were CIA Hyde Park. I could tell just by, that's right. I could tell by the cooking. I've had bites from you over the years. I think one time you saved my life with a chicken biscuit in the kitchen at Atlanta Food and Wine.
Oh, that's right. I did do some Billy D's fried chicken biscuits back then.
And I hadn't had food. It's a little known fact, Southern Fork listeners, that a lot of us that participate in food festivals really don't get much to eat because we're busy, we're cooking or whatever. But I had moderated a big panel and hadn't eaten for a long time. And I remember that chicken biscuit in the hallway. I was like, oh, thank God. It was so good. And now I have my Spicewalla Billy D's fried chicken spice.
Coming soon to a store near you.
I'm very excited. So I'm so thrilled to finally get some time to really connect with you. And something I reserve just for Southern Fork listeners is my magic picnic basket question. I have enjoyed conversations through the years with our community of culinary makers, and we often ask about death row meals, but I instead would like to bring you some things in a magic picnic basket that bring you life.
Okay.
So with this magic picnic basket, I can time travel. I can go back and ask anybody to make one more bite of something that you'd like to have. I can cook a little bit and I can source for you. Although I'm pretty impressed with your sourcing. I'm not anywhere close to getting 300 varieties of mushrooms, but I know this shifts and changes. And especially for someone like you who is following the micro seasons within the larger seasons, it's today. We're sitting in the middle of an Appalachian spring. And I mean, Explore Asheville really teed it up for me right here with the last few days of gorgeous weather. So what can I put in that basket for you? It doesn't have to be a picnic and it doesn't all have to go together. I think multiple chefs have put in all meat.
This is for a picnic basket to bring me back to life.
Okay.
I think just things front of mind. Last night we made the sunburst trout flatbread.
Right.
They do this cold smoked trout and their trout caviar. I love it on everything. I was a New Yorker for a little while, so I love a good lox bagel.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Really good, like chewy but crispy, everything spice bagel. A good.
Is there any other kind of bagel besides everything spice? I don't know.
I'm not going to say their name, but I'm going to throw a friend of mine under the bus. We had to talk about bagels the other day, and she was like, "Oh, my favorite is a blueberry bagel."
No.
I looked at her and said, "You're fired." You're gone. Bye.
No. What?
I said, who? What?
The only thing worse is a whole grain blueberry bagel, which seems like a really small jump right there. Okay, so we've got a lox bagel with sunburst trout, everything spice.
Everything spice. I love their smoked trout caviar is amazing. Pickled red onions, a good either wild ramp cream cheese, scallion chive cream cheese, a slice of really good heirloom tomato, salt, black pepper. That's it. Mm-hmm. Life is good.
Wow. Okay. So you're a wine guy. So, and cocktail. So what, we got to have some kind of beverage in there.
Oh, what are we going to drink? Drinking with a bagel, huh?
I mean, we can, right?
I mean, you can drink with anything. I don't know. I'd probably drink rosé with that. There's
sparkling or still?
I would drink a Basque Chocolina.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds really good with that.
Effervescent, low alcohol, high acidity.
Great with cutting through that cream cheese.
Mm-hmm. Be spectacular.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good. Wow, that's a pretty simple basket.
There's lots of other things. I think some of my other favorite things, someone asked me before about a death row meal, but I like the way you look at it, like what's going to bring you back.
Yeah.
But something for me, I lived in Southern California for a while. and I love Mexican food. Fresh guacamole, warm tortilla chips, like Pacifico with lime, sitting there on the beach watching the sunset. Like,
that sounds great.
That's a nice picnic, right?
Hey, if it has tortilla chips and bagels in it, I'm there. So
I don't know how well those pair together, but you said they don't have to work together.
They don't have to work together. It's things that you like.
I think a lot of that stuff, though, for me, food is experiential as well, right? It's what kind of mood are you in? What time of year is it? What's the company you're keeping while you're eating? People you've known forever, or are you like sharing a meal with somebody new?
Right.
Right. And I think there's all these things that sometimes we get blown away by food that we don't expect, and it makes it that much better. Or you go into a restaurant that doesn't look like it's a nice restaurant, and you have one of the best meals of your life. Those experiences that I want to recreate, again, like, eating guacamole and warm tortilla chips on the beach, right? Like, as the sun's setting, like there's this experience. But there's also this idea of like, I've had dinners before where, I've been outside, somebody cooked over a fire, right? And it's a cool, crisp evening, and you're drinking an old fashioned, and somebody's roasting a lamb shoulder on the grill, and you're like, life doesn't suck right now.
or somebody hands you a perfectly cooked chicken biscuit when you really need it. So,
and life is good, right?
And life is good.
And so, for me, it's about taking things in stride, knowing where you're at, trying to enjoy the ride, right? I even the other end of the spectrum, I go to restaurants and people say, oh my God, they overcooked your meat. And, like, I'm the kind of person that unless they really destroy it, I'm going to say, you know what? Like, do you have any sauce?
Yeah.
Like, have some ketchup.
Can I have some ketchup? Oh, God. Yeah. Well, on that note, I'm not putting ketchup in there with the bagels and the tortillas.
No, please.
But if people want to learn more about William Dissen and his new cookbook, Thoughtful Cooking, as well as the marketplace and all of the other things that he writes down in his journal at 3 a.m. and then makes happen in real life, you can go to thesouthernfork.com. I'm going to have links there as well as images so you can see the face behind the voice. If you like what you hear, it is a wonderful community of culinary makers that I am privileged to speak to in conversation through this work. And there are many more conversations in the archives, and a lot of people that William has also cooked for. So if you like this podcast, please share it. We like to talk about food, and I bet if you're listening to this, you might know somebody who likes to talk about food too. So thank you so much for taking time with me and feeding me so well. And I'm going to go home and cook from this book. Can't wait.
Well, I appreciate you adding me to your community of culinarians and to talk to you today about my new cookbook. If you want to learn more, you can follow me on Instagram, Chef Billy D.
Love it.
Come visit us in Asheville at the marketplace. We'd love to cook for you.
Hello, and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. The Marketplace is a farm-to-table restaurant, and William Dissen is a classic farm-to-table chef. And while I love the meaning behind that, and that is such a focus of the Southern Fork, through the years, I've really struggled with the term when I'm writing. And I'm not the only one. A lot of food writers have really struggled with that, but I've settled on using it again. And here's why. Anthony Bourdain years ago famously hated the term and said that he just really wanted it to just be cooking. Yes, food comes from farms. A lot of people focused on locally sourced cooking and seasonal cooking really pushed back on that farm to table moniker because they felt very strongly that it was just cooking. That's the way cooking should be done. And I agreed with them. This, to me, is my favorite way to cook and my favorite way to eat. And if you've listened to the show, it's pretty evident. But I also am a service writer and writing about a sense, taste, a lot of the time, and food, which is an experiential thing, right? And I'm trying to explain it to you. And sometimes I'm at a loss for words. And farm to table is a very useful explanation. It is like, a Mediterranean focused restaurant. Of course, that is a overview of what's actually happening in whatever restaurant that is, but you get the drift of what kind of restaurant you're going to. And I write a lot of these best restaurant lists and descriptors for travel magazines and other publications. It's nice to have, you know what you're getting into when I say or write farm to table. So even though myself and a lot of people really ascribe to this style of cooking as a main way to kind of organize our food, I've decided to go back and embrace farm to table as a thing. And let me just be real. That's the kind of stuff that sometimes writers think about. Like, should I use that word? Is that how we should talk about it? I know this sounds very granular, but I think it is an important thing to say because not all restaurants are farm to table. And it is also a very particular style where most of the things are locally sourced instead of just a few. On the other hand, I'm not a fan of foodie, nor will you hear me using that term. I've said this before years ago, but I still stick by that. I think that all of us, if we're eating good food, like it. So it's a weird thing to call a human a foodie. We need it to survive. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, and I hope you find a good local bite of something delicious this weekend.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?